Today, stories about people getting their email accounts hacked or their online information phished are becoming increasingly common. Cybercrime is more pervasive than ever. In fact, even at just the UW alone, according to the Chief Information Security Officer's annual report, from 2013 to 2014, there was a 300% increase in compromised UW accounts. In 2015, the Global State of Information Security found that the number of security incidents around the world was 48%, which is over 100,000 attacks per day. To combat this rise of cybercrime, in recent years, companies such as Microsoft and Google have implemented two-step verification methods. Yet it seemed that from our own experiences, these services are extremely underused, and most people aren't even aware that they exist. Many of these cybercrimes that we hear about in our social circles could have been avoided if multi-factor authentication was simply used.
For instance, Jooneil, the founder and director of the game company Valve, gave away the password and username to a Steam platform account. He claimed that even if hackers had access to his username and password, it would still be near impossible to reach his account due to multi-factor authentication.
Our team was interested in finding out if college students really understand multi-factor authentication and if they are fully taking advantage of it. Multi-factor authentication is a method of authentication in which a user is only granted access to a system after successfully presenting at least two separate pieces of evidence to an authentication mechanism, composed of several factors. These factors include something you know, such as passwords or pins, something you have, such as a key card or a phone, and something you are, such as your fingerprint or your retina pattern. In addition, many companies named their multi-factor authentication systems as two-step or two-factor. For our purposes, we use the terms interchangeably. We think that multi-factor authentication is extremely important to utilize when available, since it significantly decreases the probability of unauthorized access to your online accounts.
To answer our research question, we chose to use a survey in order to determine trends in MFA usage, as well as gauge popular opinion on MFA system use and experiences. We specifically chose to use surveys because it provided easy access to a lot of participants, their opinions, and their experiences with the technology. Our survey was conducted with Google Forms and recruited individuals primarily of ages 18 through 23 through convenience sampling. We used convenience sampling due to the limited timeline of the project and felt that it would still provide a reasonably adequate representation of the college-aged population. Before conducting the survey, we also ensured that participants were informed of the survey's purpose and provided consent to our use of their data. Finally, all responses were submitted anonymously in order to protect participant privacy.
We began our survey by asking participants whether or not they were familiar with MFA because we wanted to compare the responses of those initially familiar with MFA and those who were unfamiliar. This was followed by a few questions to gauge the trends in user perception of internet security, such as whether they have had their accounts compromised and how secure they felt they were online. We asked this because we wanted to understand the correlation between MFA usage and perceived account security. Then participants were given a standard definition of MFA to provide everyone with a baseline understanding of the concept. Next, they were asked about the usage and experience with MFA across Google, Apple, and Microsoft services. We chose these companies because they have commonly used services with large online user bases. Finally, participants were asked about MFA usage across other systems, whether or not they were required to use MFA for work or school, and whether or not they would choose to use MFA if offered in the future.
To break down the data, we used the technique of content analysis. We began by coding all of the qualitative data, such as free responses, and created buckets of coded terms. Then we performed quantitative analysis on these buckets by counting the occurrences of each code. Next, we used the quantitative data to generate charts and graphs for interpretation. Finally, we derived our conclusions through an analysis of both the quantitative and qualitative data we received.
Our survey results show that approximately a third of respondents weren't familiar with MFA, despite half of our participants being in technical fields of study. Next, 71% of respondents believed that cybercriminals were either active or very active at trying to steal their personal information. At the same time, only a total of 46% of respondents felt their accounts were at least secure. This reveals that a majority of participants felt that their online accounts are insecure. 75% of our respondents used some type of MFA, and we found Google's system was the most commonly used by far. However, only 19% of total users used Google's two-step verification, and less than 20% used more than two MFA systems. This means that a considerable percentage of users are now using MFA in some form, but only for one or two of their accounts. In general, we found that college-age individuals, especially those in non-tech-based majors, are unaware of MFA or its impact. Furthermore, MFA is still heavily underused, not because people are not using it, but because people are not using enough MFA systems to secure their online accounts.